Alexander here. I'm a doctor of audiology, and I have been privileged to work with auditory processing disorder, both the evaluation and the treatment, for more than a decade. Many people feel concern and overwhelm with auditory processing disorder because they don't get to see what I get to see in my clinic every day. When I see a case of auditory processing issues, I see potential and hope. I want to give you new insight by sharing the stories of real clients and professionals who do this work and are working every day to make life better through the therapy associated with auditory processing disorder. This episode begins a two-part series of a woman named Jackie. Her name has been changed for confidentiality reasons, but she has given me full permission to share her story with you. Jackie came to our clinic when she was referred by a talented otologist in Tauranga, New Zealand. The otologist noted that she had difficulties hearing in background noise and at meetings at work. Although her hearing test results often came back as within normal limits, she expressed difficulties hearing ever since she was young. She had been to multiple audiologists and had hearing tests done and didn't feel like the test results fully explained the difficulties she was having on a daily basis. So I invite you to come in and listen to Jackie's story. And the great part about it, like I said, it's a two-part series, is in session number 2, I'm going to go over her story from after she's experienced auditory processing therapy. So I invite you to come listen in on Jackie's story and see if any of it sounds familiar. Okay, tell me your auditory processing story. Tell me what your main concern is and, when all of this started.
Okay, the whole history?
Yeah.
Okay, so I realized quite young that I wasn't hearing the way that I thought I should do. And I remember saying to my mum, I think my hearing isn't very good. And she kind of just said that I needed to pay more attention, which ended up being what was reiterated all through school as well. So people didn't realise that I was actually struggling to process information. They just said that I was daydreaming and not paying attention. And so I struggled academically. I struggled handwriting. My handwriting was terrible. My spelling was dreadful. My ability to develop a good vocabulary was very hard, and I struggled a lot. I compared myself with other kids in the class, and I was definitely not average. I was definitely probably below. And I remember in primary school and high school wondering why everybody else was using these long words and was able to put words together and write stories, and where I just struggled so much with all of that sort of thing. So more physically, I can stutter, especially if I'm tired or if I'm trying to recall a story and I don't understand it in a really clear way. So if I'm trying to remember things and then reiterate, I can stutter. And I'm very good at switching words around in sentences. And I'm very good at switching the first letter of 2 words around in the sentence. And I do that a lot. Yeah.
Can you give me an example of what that might look like or what that sounds like?
So instead of saying I'm going to drive to the shop, I'll say I'm going to drive to the drop. Or something like that.
A spoonerism.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at that. Or I'd just swap the whole
words around.
I'd say I'm going to shop to the drive.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I do that quite a lot as well.
There is a guy, Reverend Archibald J. Spooner, who used to do these guests. He used to do that a lot. One of my favorite ones, because I'm a huge fan of spoonerisms, is he said publicly, "Long live the queer old dean."
Yeah.
He said,
100% I'd do that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
What else did he say? The British soldiers are noble tons of soil. Tons of toil. And what else? What was the other one? I just think that I'm not as dumb as some Cinco Peep I am. Is that terrible? That one was my favorite growing up. But that's okay. All right, so
I struggle to retain information as well. And I struggle to retain what I've read. So that can be quite frustrating. And reading can be quite exhausting for me. And I have to catch myself because I'll just go off on a train of thought, and I'd be like, hang on a second, I've cast my eyes down this page and I didn't retain any information. And I'd talk to people and they'd say, oh, isn't reading the best because it transports you? And I'm like, no. Reading is a physical exercise where I'm taking information in. I don't go anywhere. I get an idea of what they're trying to talk about.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
It's not
it's
relaxing.
It's an act of will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I get that.
Yeah. Spell check is my best friend. That's been quite transformative for me in my life because just even sort of fairly basic words, I would, in my head, I'd be like, I can't comprehend whether the I is supposed to go before the E or if it's supposed to be a C or an S or a PH or a D, a PH or an S. Yeah, because people say sound out the word and I'm like, that doesn't help me because in my head I can't grasp what it's supposed to sound like anyway. And if people talk fast or if they're not facing me when they talk, it's just a mumble. If I go and get takeaways and the person has English as a second language, I might need my husband as an interpreter because I won't be able to follow what they're saying. Or if I work with staff who English isn't a second language, that's really hard because I really struggle to understand them. And then I don't want them thinking that I don't understand them because I don't value them or that I have a racism issue. It's actually, I actually cannot understand what they say. It just comes out in a tumble of sounds. In my 20s, I didn't bother socialising, really. If I went to a party, I'd be the person sitting outside, out on the back porch, because there's no point in being inside because when there's background noise, I would struggle to, if I was sitting 2 metres away from someone or a metre away, I wouldn't be able to understand anything they're saying. And then if someone has to sort of shout into my ear, then it physically hurts. So I became a bit more of a recluse. I didn't bother because I felt quite isolated. I definitely felt like an outsider and that I didn't fit in. I didn't follow jokes the way other people would. That was a big thing for me. I was like, I can understand the concept is amusing, but I'd miss the nuance. Yeah. If my husband's not at home, I'd watch a movie with subtitles on because I really love clever dialogue, but I don't get it if I'm just watching.
If you're just having to rely on your hearing to pick up that.
No chance.
Yeah.
No, I miss so much. So, and if I like a film, I watch it over and over to try and pick up more of the dialogue.
That's wonderful. So, no, it's great. I really appreciate you telling me these stories because it isn't the first time I've heard these kinds of things, and I've experienced a bit of it myself. So I get it. And it is frustrating, and it is hard. So how were you feeling about coming today?
Well, in all honesty, I'm pretty skeptical about the whole thing because I can't comprehend how anyone can improve the situation. Because when an audiologist tells me after an exam that my hearing is normal and my ears aren't blocked, and so the problem is in my brain or my inner ear, then I instantly think, well, I'm going to have to live with this and I'm going to just struggle, So I'll just send more emails and have less phone calls.
What do you do at work to keep up?
So at work,
what are your coping strategies?
So at work, I have requested that I sit in an isolated space in the office because it's open plan. So open plan is very distracting because background noise makes being able to think and process any information near me really hard because background noise can be really overwhelming for me. So I try and sit in an isolated place. If I can, I'll work with headphones on to isolate myself. I now tell people that I struggle to hear and I explain to them that I need them to talk to me slowly and clearly and face me because if they talk as they're walking away, I won't understand. And I even had an instance yesterday at work. My colleague and I were getting a cup of coffee and we were chatting and then all I heard was mumble, mumble, mumble. And she said, but that's just par for course in what we do. And I just smiled and nodded and I went, yeah. And she just looked at me blankly because I clearly hadn't responded appropriately. And I got back to my desk and there was a book on my desk. And I was like, oh my God, there's a book on my desk. Who gave me this? And she was like, that was what we were just talking about. And I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't actually hear you, so you just got a smile and nod. Thank you so much for this. And that kind of thing is very common for me, that just a smile and nod because I'll get the first bit and then it just goes and it's too embarrassing to ask people to repeat themselves. I prefer email communication because at least I can understand what people want, and I try to have meetings that aren't in an open plan area because the background noise will make it impossible to hear, and I try and keep anything like that in a small space with limited numbers of people so that they understand what's going on. I take lots of notes as well, but that's really tricky because I struggle to take in information and write it down at the same time. Communicating the situation with people is really important, and even people not in my direct team but sort of that I interact with a lot, I've actually started saying, look, I need to tell you that I actually struggle to hear, because it would just come across that I'm not interested or I'm indifferent, and actually I just can't hear what people say. Or people would say something as I'm walking out of a room and I'll get no response because I just heard poof, poof, poof. Yeah.
Cool. And how does your husband or your partner deal with that?
I think it's probably quite frustrating for him. So he'll call me from his car phone. So I'll be on speaker in his vehicle, and that makes it nearly impossible to understand a lot of what he says. I can't differentiate between words, and I know that can be really frustrating for him. So I have to just ask him to repeat himself a lot. At home, he does say that I talk too loud, but they say that at work as well, that my volume is way higher than what it should be. And I will probably have the TV up too loud just to try and understand.
Just to kind of decrease a little bit of the effort that you're having to have for listening. Yeah. You think, okay, if I make it a little bit louder, I will at least get the sound coming to me. Yeah. Do you think that maybe you project your voice a little bit more just to make sure other people can hear you clearly?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I probably talk much louder and I definitely project more than what I need to, because that's what I want from people. And I don't realise that other people don't have this.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Now, you were telling me a little bit about your family, that I think when we had this pre-interview, you were just kind of talking about how frustrating it was for your family to not know what you needed.
Yeah.
And they kind of made assumptions that maybe weren't always as helpful.
Yeah.
Right?
So I struggled at school, and I struggled to understand and comprehend. And so then my lack of intelligence became like a family joke. And I became like the family. Well, actually, it wasn't the entire family, it was one person in my family. It was a key person in my family that would make me a joke, or the lack of my intelligence a joke. And yeah, no, that was pretty...
So you feel like it was your lack of intelligence, but maybe in retrospect it wasn't lack of intelligence. Yeah. Maybe it was more of a processing difficulty,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because I wasn't academic, the assumption was made that I was just stupid bitch, basically, was what I was called. But actually I'm kinesthetic, so if I'm doing something with my hands, or if I'm practically doing it, I actually learn incredibly quickly, and I retain information when I receive it in a different way, especially if it's visual, or it's visual combined with doing, then I will remember. But if I have to learn by rote or by lecture, then I'll really struggle. And I don't think we had the understanding in my family that maybe there was something going on, but there were other issues there as well. And the fact that, I don't know, even down to the fact that I was a girl and not a boy, so I didn't have maybe as much value.
That's tough. It is not a very easy way to grow up.
It definitely caused some arguments when I got a bit older and I looked back and saw what had been going on.
When you first talked to me, I love that you said that as a child you remember thinking, my ears don't work the way they're supposed to.
Yeah. The tricky thing with that is because when you're a kid, you'll get an idea, and so I was like, this isn't right, or it doesn't seem like it is as it should be. But because the grown-ups around you don't listen to you, and they say, no, it's just you, you're not paying attention, you're a daydreamer, you're actually just not very smart, then you sort of stop saying anything. And it wasn't until I got into my 30s that I was like, no, hang on a second, this just isn't right. Yeah.
So then you were also saying, how many hearing tests have you had?
I had an initial audiology appointment when I was in my early 30s, I believe, and then another one before I saw Wouter, and 2 or 3, and then the third one I said to them, this isn't right, because I was sure I needed the hearing aid, and that's when they thought that I had a processing problem potentially, and I was referred to Wouter Ten Cate, who then referred me to you.
So like you said before, you were concerned that your previous tests would not show, it just wasn't realistic for you to concentrate at that level for that long because it's just not sustainable, right? I saw in that last one that you were using your cognition. You were using your deductive reasoning as opposed to just letting the sounds come to you and whatnot, right? So that was really good. All of this points very clearly to auditory processing disorder. So this is very cool, all right? We've got a place to start. So we've got baseline information. We know how things are. And something I didn't tell you is we even count each time you pause.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
Audiologists usually look at things in quantitative ways. We look at which numbers stand out, and we look at the dichotomous, is it correct or isn't it correct? All points, no points. And with this testing, we don't just look at is it right or is it not right, but what did it take for you to get it right?
Yeah.
Yeah? So there were lots of cool coping strategies that you utilized that I'd love for you to not have to do anymore.
And I realized what I do as well is that I curl and I close my eyes and I put my ear to the sound.
Yeah.
Because I will close my eyes a lot if I have to try and put sound together, because visual stimulation on top of trying to understand sound, it's like the best analogy for it, because if I'm trying to put sound together and then I have visual as well, it'll just become a blank white space, and I wouldn't have taken anything in my brain to go, I don't know.
Right. So we have only limited bandwidth in our brain at one time, our ability to process things. And your auditory processing is requiring so much mental load that you can't do visual processing on top at the same time. So you were cutting down one sensory input in order to pay more attention to another. Makes total sense.
When I get stressed and overwhelmed and tired, I will always go to isolate myself from as little interaction and external stimulation as possible. And the feeling is like I want to crawl into a box and just cut out all of the external stimulation, because it's just so exhausted from trying to comprehend everything that you just want to sort of hide away from it for a while just to recalibrate yourself.
Completely get it. And to be honest with you, the first time I observed this testing, when I got in my car to drive home, it was an hour drive home, so kind of similar, except you're going 2 hours. And I felt like I was going to fall asleep the entire way home. It just wore me out to even concentrate that long, and I wasn't even the one being tested. I was just watching. Yeah. I was observing, and I felt just ridiculously exhausted. But that doesn't have to be a reality.
Well, that would be a miracle.
Okay, so let's see if we can make miracles happen.